Every like and every new subscriber is a reminder that I'm not sharing these stories in vain. Thank you for being here. Now, listen closely. I used to think betrayal was something you saw in movies, dramatic, loud, and impossible to miss. But in real life, it's silent. It seeps in like a shadow behind the curtain. And sometimes you're the last one to notice it. I was America's sweetheart. Now, I'm a name that whispers scandal. But let me tell you how it really happened. There's a moment just before sunset in Los Angeles that feels almost sacred. Photographers call it the golden hour, that brief slice of time when the light softens, everything glows, and imperfections blur under nature's filter. It's beautiful, but it's also deceiving, because under that golden haze, even a collapsing world can look picture perfect. That's how my life looked to the outside world for nearly a decade. Soft, flawless, dipped in sunlight. A-list actor, two-time award winner, the guy everyone trusted to sell family movies and designer suits. Paparazzi caught me smiling. Fans screamed my name. Brands begged for my face. But behind that curated glow was something else entirely. Something darker, heavier. When I first arrived in Hollywood, I was just a kid with a head full of impossible dreams and a rusted-out Jeep that coughed more than it ran. I waited tables, took background roles, said yes to everything. That hunger, it got me in the door. That smile, it kept me in the room. But over time, I learned that talent was secondary. What mattered more was image. Control the story, they said. Always stay likable. Always say the right thing. Never let them see the cracks. And I was good at it. Too good. The climb was slow, then sudden. One breakout role turned into three. Late-night shows started inviting me on, calling me the guy next door with movie star charm. Studio heads took me to dinner. I got a new agent, then a new house, then a new jawline, courtesy of a subtle cosmetic fix no one talked about, but everyone noticed. People loved me because I made them feel safe. Predictable. Good-looking, but not threatening. Funny, but never offensive. The man your girlfriend could admire and your boyfriend wouldn't mind. I was manufactured perfection. I didn't resent it. Not at first. But eventually, even a well-oiled machine starts to overheat. The thing about fame is that it doesn't just lift you up, it hollows you out. It turns your privacy into currency and your pain into content. I couldn't eat at my favorite diner anymore without being filmed from behind a coffee mug. Couldn't get groceries without being told how lucky I was. Couldn't sleep in on a bad day without headlines wondering if I was depressed or dying. I told myself it was worth it until I met her. She came into my life like a gust of wind through a locked room. I won't say her name yet. You'll learn it soon enough. For now, just know she was everything I wasn't. Wild where I was polished. Impulsive where I was scripted. She didn't care about press junkets or image control. She was lightning in heels, and I, foolishly, tried to bottle it. The first time we were seen together, the headlines called us a modern fairy tale. Hollywood's golden boy and the rebellious muse. We laughed about it, then leaned into it. She challenged me to live off script, to say what I really thought, to loosen the grip on my carefully constructed brand. And for a while I did. I stopped shaving every day, wore mismatched socks, went out without a baseball cap pulled low. It felt like freedom. But freedom, I'd learned, often comes disguised as chaos. Our marriage happened fast. Too fast. 6 months from first date to I do. I told myself that love doesn't follow timelines, that I'd earned something spontaneous. But the truth was simpler. I didn't want to be alone. I'd spent so long performing. I needed someone to remind me who I was beneath the act. Or maybe I just needed someone to believe the illusion with me. The wedding was private but extravagant. Ocean cliffs, string quartets, handwritten vows that the tabloids later analyzed like sacred texts. I remember standing there, ring in hand, thinking, This is the first thing in years I haven't faked. I believe that. But belief, I've come to understand, isn't always enough. In the months that followed, our life blurred into red carpets and rooftop dinners. She became a fixture in magazines, power couple spreads, matching outfits, interviews where she called me her soulmate. I smiled through all of it, genuinely at first, then mechanically. I started noticing things. The late-night phone calls she wouldn't explain. The way her laughter shifted when she thought I wasn't listening. Subtle changes, like the way she'd recoil ever so slightly when I touched her shoulder. But I said nothing, because silence, for someone like me, was a learned defense. You don't confront what you can't afford to lose. And I couldn't afford to lose her, not publicly, not with the world watching. So I let the cracks widen. I told myself it was stress, press tours, burnout. I threw myself into a new role, a dramatic indie film I didn't even like, just to stay distracted, to pretend everything was still bathed in that golden light. But the light was fading, and deep down I knew it. There's a moment in every actor's life when the camera lingers too long, when you realize the eyes aren't admiring anymore. They're waiting for you to slip. That moment had arrived for me. I could feel it in the interviews, the subtle digs, the questions that turned sharp around the edges. My PR team begged me to stay visible, to squash rumors before they started. But rumors, like fire, need only a spark. And mine was coming. Looking back now, I wonder how I didn't see it sooner. How I mistook performance for partnership. How I built a home out of cardboard and expected it to withstand storms. But that's the thing about actors. We believe the lie if we repeat it often enough. And I had repeated it for years. We're happy. We're in love. We're unbreakable. Only one of those was ever true. And even that had an expiration date. Her name was Evelyn. For syllables that curled off the tongue like cigarette smoke in a film noir, soft, slow, seductive. She wasn't the kind of woman you met at a dinner party or bumped into at the grocery store. Evelyn arrived like a scene change, deliberate, dramatic, impossible to ignore. We met at a charity gala in Malibu. I remember the exact moment because she was the only person in the room not pretending to care. While the rest of us nodded through speeches and rehearsed our smiles for the photographers, Evelyn stood near the bar, swirling her wine like it had wronged her. She didn't glance at me once, and that was the trap. I wasn't used to being overlooked, not in a room like that, and especially not by someone like her. She wore black, not the elegant, safe kind. No, this was rebellion stitched into silk. Her hair was loose and careless, her expression unreadable. When I finally walked up to her, she didn't smile or offer her hand. She just looked at me, unimpressed and perfectly still. That was how she operated, like a storm trapped in a glass box. I didn't fall for her immediately. That would have been too easy. Instead, she made me work for every flicker of warmth. Her words came laced with subtle disdain, like she was constantly testing me for weakness. And maybe I was weak for something unscripted, something messy. Weak for someone who didn't care who I was on IMDb. She wasn't in the industry, not really. A few modeling gigs, some PR stunts, a perfume campaign in Europe. She had the kind of resume built on attention, not achievement. But it didn't matter. She didn't want to be famous. She wanted to be powerful. And those are very different beasts. Dating her was like stepping out of a cage and into another one, just bigger and better decorated. She hated small talk, adored chaos. One minute she'd be pressed against me on a rooftop, whispering about fate. The next, she'd vanish for days without explanation. I never knew where I stood, and that uncertainty became my addiction. I introduced her to my world. She laughed at it. Award shows bored her. Publicists annoyed her. She rolled her eyes at photographers and refused to wear anything sent by a stylist. When my team suggested softening her image, she posted an unfiltered photo of herself smoking in a bathtub with a caption, "Your golden boy likes it dirty." The internet exploded. My brand took a hit, but I defended her. Of course I did. Because in every interview, when they asked about the post or the rumors or the fights, I could point at her and say, "That's love. That's real." And the audience, starved for authenticity, ate it up. We got married on the cliffs of Big Sur. No press, no guests except for a violinist, a drunk officiant, and two bodyguards pretending not to care. She wore a black dress. I wore hope like a suit 2 sizes too small. Our vows were written the night before, scribbled on hotel stationery and half memorized. She cried when I read mine. I wanted to believe the tears were real. But now, I wonder if they were just well-timed. Evelyn thrived in contradiction. She'd spend the morning meditating, then pick a fight over how I butter my toast. She told me I was too polished, that I needed more edge. She hated my scripts, said they were fake. When I offered to write one about us, our whirlwind, our chaos, she smirked and said, "Why would anyone watch a tragedy in slow motion?" She knew what we were. I didn't. I kept convincing myself that turbulence meant passion, that the best stories are born from tension. But our story wasn't building toward a climax. It was quietly unraveling. And every time I tried to stitch it back together, she cut the thread. She started traveling alone more often. First, it was girls' weekends, then business meetings, then silence. She'd return with new jewelry, new photos, new bruises she didn't bother to explain. When I asked, she kissed me too hard. When I pressed further, she laughed too loud. The intimacy between us became theater, rehearsed, predictable, hollow. I found myself rehearsing, too, smiling for cameras, posting anniversary photos we took months earlier, telling late-night hosts how lucky I was, telling myself the same thing. I clung to the image of us because it was all I had left. And in Hollywood, image is everything. But there were signs, always signs. The way her phone never left her side. The long showers with the music blasting. The sudden passwords. The way she'd tilt her head when I asked simple questions, like she was calculating how much truth to give me without breaking character. One night, I came home early from a shoot. The house was dark, quiet, but her purse was on the counter. Her keys, her shoes. The bedroom door was closed. My name wasn't on her lips when I opened it. There was no confrontation. No screaming, just the sound of her surprise, the look of brief annoyance, like I'd interrupted a spa treatment. He left. I stayed. She poured wine and asked if I wanted to talk about it. That's when I knew I'd lost her long before that night. And maybe, deep down, I've been the only one pretending we were still real. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. I just stood there, staring at the woman I married, and the man she never stopped being drawn to. It wasn't about sex. It never is. It was about power, about control, and about the thrill of breaking what everyone else envies. She apologized the next day, but not in the way people do when they're sorry. It was more like an acknowledgement of defeat. Like, you caught the trick, now what? There were tears, of course. There always are, but they dried quickly. We didn't separate. Not immediately. Instead, we crafted a new performance. Public appearances, united fronts, carefully worded statements. Hollywood loves a comeback, and we gave them one. But behind closed doors, the silence was thunderous. She became a ghost in our own home, and I a relic of a man who once believed in devotion. Her name was Evelyn, for syllables that once made my heart race. Now, they echo in my head like a line from a film I no longer want to finish. And still, there's more to tell. I always believed I had control over my life. On set, I knew exactly who I was. Every gesture, every line, every camera angle was mine to command. But in my own home, I had become something unrecognizable. Not a husband, not a lover, not even a man. I was just a shadow, rehearsing silence. After that night, the one where I found Evelyn with him, something in me shut off, or maybe it turned on. Some primal gear shifted, and I stopped reacting. I didn't leave. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. Instead, I observed, like I was preparing for a role I hadn't auditioned for, but instinctively understood. I had played detectives before, cops, lawyers, even a secret agent once. I knew the beats, the way a man uncovers lies by watching more than asking. So, I began studying her like a script I had to learn line by line. She had patterns. Mornings were mechanical. No eye contact, no coffee for two. She'd play music in the bathroom, always the same playlist. She took longer to get ready, longer to leave, but never seemed late. She stopped kissing me goodbye. I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. The absence of small things is louder than shouting. Her wardrobe changed. Suddenly, she wore lingerie I hadn't seen before, and not for me. Subtle perfumes I couldn't name. She laughed more, not around me, but through her phone, through text notifications she never let me see. Her privacy became sacred. My presence became tolerated. It was a performance, and I knew the lines were no longer written for me. But I didn't confront her. That would have ended it too soon. And endings, I knew, only come when the audience stops watching. I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed the full picture. I needed to understand how far she'd gone and how far I'd fallen. I started with her phone, not breaking into it. That would have been too crude, too easy. Instead, I studied the rhythm. The way she turned the screen away, swiped notifications like secrets. She'd get messages in the middle of the night and check them in the bathroom, thinking I was asleep. I wasn't. I began keeping a journal, not for therapy, for evidence. I logged every late return, every unexplained charge on her card, every sudden business trip. I found receipts from restaurants I hadn't been to, flights she never mentioned, Uber rides that ended 2 blocks from our home. It felt like building a puzzle, only all the pieces were knives. I hired a private investigator, discreet, expensive, recommended by another actor whose marriage had imploded quietly. He didn't ask for details, just took the retainer and promised results. A week later, I had photos. Her in the back seat of a black car, leaning too close to someone in a suit. Her entering hotels under a different name. Her sitting on his lap in a dark lounge in West Hollywood, laughing the way she used to with me. I stared at those photos like they were storyboard from a film I didn't remember shooting. Each image stabbed a little deeper, but none surprised me. What surprised me was how numb I had become. I didn't cry. I didn't smash anything. I didn't even feel rage. What I felt was clarity, cold, precise, surgical. My marriage had died months ago. Now I was just conducting the autopsy. The investigator confirmed what I already suspected. The man was an agent. Not hers, not mine, but someone big, someone powerful, a fixer in the industry. Married, ironically, known for making careers disappear and reputations flourish. He had access, influence, and apparently my wife. They had met at a party nearly a year before. He had promised her something, a brand deal, maybe a TV show, maybe just the illusion of purpose. She had taken the bait, and now she was deep in it, emotionally, financially, maybe even professionally. He had become her lifeline, while I was just a prop in the background. I wanted to hate her, but I didn't. I hated myself more for ignoring the signs, for confusing chemistry with connection, for mistaking performance for love, for clinging to a narrative that had expired before the first act ended. I kept the photos in a folder on my laptop, labeled with a fake movie title. Winter Lights. No one would suspect a thing. Evelyn continued her performance, and I played along. We attended a gala, smiled on cue, even shared a stage kiss in front of the press. Cameras flashed. Headlines spun. still strong after the storm. If only they knew. Behind the scenes, I was preparing for my final monologue. I started writing a speech, not for an award show, but for the moment I'd confront her. I rehearsed it alone, pacing our living room like it was a stage. I wanted to hurt, not just sting, but unravel her. I wanted her to feel exposed, not for revenge, but for the truth. Because the truth was all I had left. But timing, as any actor knows, is everything. You don't just reveal the twist at any moment. You wait until the tension is unbearable, until the room is breathless, until no one can look away. So I waited. I smiled through interviews, took new roles, accepted another nomination, all while my marriage burned silently in the background. Evelyn, oblivious or overconfident, continued as if the script hadn't changed. But I knew the climax was coming. And this time, I wasn't going to be the victim. I had played the role of the fool long enough. There are nights in your life you never forget, not because they're beautiful, but because they break you so cleanly you remember the sound. For me, it was the night of the Vanguard premiere, my latest film, a psychological thriller with a budget the size of a small country's GDP and a cast stacked with Oscar winners. It was supposed to be a milestone, a celebration of everything I'd built. Instead, it was the night I realized my life wasn't a story anymore. It was a crime scene. The day started like any other press-heavy event. Hair and makeup at 10 a.m., suits pressed and laid out by noon. Publicist texts rolling in with the urgency of a fire drill. Timelines, talking points, names I needed to casually mention to keep the sponsors happy. I played along, smiled, nodded, rehearsed my lines, not for the cameras, but for her. Evelyn had promised she'd be there. She had RSVP'd with a resounding yes, asked about the dress code, even booked a stylist for the morning. It was our first major event together in weeks. The kind the tabloids craved, the kind the world still believed in. I told myself it mattered, that maybe tonight would reset something, or at least pretend to. I should have known better. By 4 o'clock, she stopped responding. No updates, no apologies, just silence. Her phone rang twice, then straight to voicemail. I didn't panic, not at first. I'd seen this before. Disappearing was part of her nature. Like smoke, elusive, untouchable. But when my driver pulled up to the estate at 6 and she still wasn't home, the panic started to settle in. Not the kind born from worry, the kind born from recognition. I already knew where she was. I just hadn't allowed myself to admit it. My stylist made small talk while adjusting my collar. I smiled on autopilot. My assistant hovered near the door with a clipboard, reminding me of the call sheet for the red carpet. I nodded, thanked him, and stepped into the black SUV waiting outside. As the city lights blurred past the tinted windows, I opened my phone. A single message from a friend, not a gossip monger, not a tabloid, just someone who'd always had my back. Check her story. Not private anymore. I opened Instagram. Evelyn had posted a short clip, 10 seconds, shot in portrait mode, but it might as well have been an eternity. She was laughing. Reclining on a rooftop, I recognized immediately it belonged to him. The agent. A private terrace downtown with a panoramic view of Los Angeles. They were drinking. She was barefoot. Someone, probably him, zoomed in as she winked and whispered something playful. I watched it 3 times. Then I closed the app. I didn't feel the heartbreak people talk about, the shattering, the breathlessness. I just felt hollow, like someone had carved the insides out of me and left the shell standing for decoration. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Not tonight. So I walked that carpet like nothing had happened. The flashes were blinding. Reporters barked questions. Fans screamed. And I smiled. That signature, charming, money-making smile I had perfected over the years. It wasn't real, but neither was anything else anymore. I posed with my co-stars. answered questions about my process, talked about how proud I was of the film, thanked the director for trusting me with such a vulnerable role. No one noticed that my heart was dissolving behind my ribcage. No one saw the betrayal stitched into the hem of my tuxedo. The after-party was held in a private penthouse in the hills. Valet parking, crystal glasses, rooftop heaters. Everyone who mattered was there. Producers, executives, streaming giants, influencers, critics, and close friends I hadn't seen in years. They all congratulated me, told me how brilliant I was, how groundbreaking the performance had been. I thanked them, toasted, laughed at the right moments. I was back on set, and this time, the role was survival. Evelyn never showed. Not a single call, not a text. She didn't even bother to pretend she cared. The irony of it all was almost poetic. I had spent months gathering evidence, building a case like some amateur detective, and she just handed me the confession on a silver, glittering screen. No chão, no remorse. Just pure, curated cruelty. I left the party around 2 a.m., long after the champagne had lost its sparkle and the music became background noise. I got into another black car, this time alone. The silence was suffocating. Back home, I walked through her front door like a stranger. The lights were off. Her heels weren't by the door. Her scent wasn't in the air. For the first time in months, the house felt honest, empty, and finally admitting it. I went to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, my tuxedo jacket still on, my phone buzzing softly with congratulations from people who didn't know what I had lost, or maybe what I had finally seen. I pulled out my laptop, opened the folder titled Winter Lights, the photos, the receipts, the hotel bookings, and now that video, all in one place, a curated archive of betrayal. It would be easy to leak it, to burn everything down with one email. But I didn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about truth and timing. Because I had learned one thing, if nothing else, when you let someone lie to you for long enough, the most powerful thing you can do isn't scream. It's to let them lie while you hold the evidence. Let them build the illusion higher and higher until you decide to turn on the spotlight. And that spotlight was coming. Not at home, not in private, but on a stage where the world couldn't look away. Because betrayal is cheap in whispers, but devastating in applause. Revenge in Hollywood doesn't look like a gun or a scream. It looks like a smile on camera, a headline in bold, a calculated leak delivered to just the right inbox. It's not loud. It's surgical. And in the hands of someone who's been betrayed enough, it's art. After the premiere, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark with my laptop open, scrolling through every piece of digital proof I had collected over the months. Photos, locations, phone records, the rooftop video, Evelyn's entire double life, lined up like a storyboard from a film I'd never agreed to star in. By sunrise, I had a plan. I wasn't going to confront her. That would give her control. She'd cry, deflect, manipulate. She was too good at it, better than most actresses I'd worked with. Confrontation was a trap for amateurs. I wasn't that anymore. Instead, I chose exposure, but not the kind that ends in screaming matches and broken glass. No, I wanted a reckoning that lived forever, a moment that couldn't be walked back. A scene so clean and final that even Hollywood's short memory wouldn't forget it. The first step was subtle. I changed the passwords on our joint accounts. Bank, cloud, streaming services. She noticed within hours and texted, asking if there had been a glitch. I replied that I was sorting through some things. She sent a heart emoji. The nerve of it almost made me laugh. Then I contacted a publicist I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who owed me favors and hated Evelyn on principle. She worked for one of the major outlets, but moonlighted as a fixer, the kind of woman who knew where stories came from and where they needed to go. I sent her the file. Everything. She didn't ask questions. She just replied with one sentence. Let me know when to pull the trigger. I told her not yet, because before the explosion, I needed the room to be full. I needed the audience seated. I needed the lights to be just right. That's when I realized the perfect moment had already been scheduled. Emmy night. I was nominated for Best Actor in a Limited Series, the kind of role that requires you to cry on cue and look good doing it. The industry adored the performance. Critics called it raw and transformative. It was ironic. The most honest work I'd done was still fiction. Evelyn, of course, had RSVP'd. She was planning her dress, her press photos, her moment. She still thought we were a brand, that we could be salvaged, or more likely, that she could use me one last time for a photo shoot on the red carpet. I didn't dissuade her. Let her prepare. Let her walk into the lights, not knowing what was about to hit her. The closer we got to the Emmys, the more silent I became. I stopped asking where she was. Stopped reacting to the late-night returns. Stopped responding to her carefully scripted affection. I had become a ghost with perfect posture. The week of the event, she grew nervous. I could see it in the way she fussed with her appearance, the way she lingered near me, like proximity could rebuild trust. She touched my arm more often, laughed too hard at nothing, asked me questions she already knew the answers to. It was all a performance, and I let it run, because her downfall wouldn't be in my rage. It would be in my silence. The night of the Emmys arrived like a storm held together by diamonds and spray tan. Limousines lined the boulevard. Cameras clicked like machine guns. Fans screamed. And there we were, Hollywood's beautiful lie, holding hands in front of the press. I could feel her tension as we posed together. She gripped my hand tighter than necessary. Her smile twitched at the edges. She knew something was off. She just didn't know what. We walked the red carpet, answered questions, waved. The cameras ate us up. She leaned in close, whispered a joke about winning again, as if we were still on the same team. Inside, the room buzzed with tension and air conditioning. Celebrities laughed in their champagne bubbles. Producers kissed each other's cheeks with masked disdain. I sat in our row, perfectly still, watching the stage, counting minutes. Then my name was called. Best Actor. I stood up, adjusted my cuffs, walked toward the light. The applause was deafening. Evelyn clapped, too, perhaps relieved, perhaps afraid. I took the stage, the statue in hand, heart calm. This was it. I looked out over the crowd. Every face I'd ever needed approval from staring back. I cleared my throat, smiled, and spoke. I want to thank the Academy for recognizing a performance that was very personal. In fact, it was so personal, I've been living it off screen, too. A few chuckles, some confused looks. I owe this to the people who pushed me, who challenged me to dig deeper, to pretend better, to lie without blinking. Now the crowd was silent. To the woman who taught me what betrayal really feels like, thank you. You were the best acting coach I never paid for. I smiled, took a breath. And if anyone wants to see her finest work, check your inboxes in 10 minutes. I walked off the stage. Backstage was chaos. Phones vibrated. Whispers started. My publicist rushed me, saying my phone had exploded with press requests. The link had gone live. Every photo, every receipt, every clip uploaded to a private server and shared with every major outlet in the room. Evelyn's face when she came backstage. I'll never forget it. She looked like someone who'd walked into her own funeral. Makeup flawless, dress impeccable, but her eyes wide, wet-cornered, gave her away. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, and I didn't give her any. I simply walked past her. That night, I didn't go to the after-party. I went home, alone, to a house that no longer felt haunted. I poured a drink, took off my jacket, and sat in the quiet. I didn't feel triumphant. Not really, but I felt clean. And in this town, that's rarer than trophy. The morning after the Emmys felt like waking up in a different lifetime, as if the man who had walked on stage and set his world on fire wasn't me, but a version I had finally outgrown. The sun poured through the windows of my house like it hadn't in weeks, and for the first time in years. I didn't reach for my phone right away, but I could hear it, buzzing, vibrating, ringing. There were calls from everyone. My agent, my manager, studio execs, friends, enemies pretending to be friends. Even my lawyer, and he never called unless something was on fire, which, to be fair, most things were. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I poured coffee, sat on the back patio, let the silence breathe. Eventually, curiosity won. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through the damage. Headlines screamed from every angle. Actor drops bombshell at Emmys. Wife's affair exposed live. Golden couple shattered in real time. She cheated. He won. Then he burned it all down. There were reaction videos, panel discussions, think pieces about masculinity, betrayal, public revenge. Clips of my speech were trending globally. The clip of Evelyn's rooftop video had gone viral, spliced between red carpet shots of her grinning beside me just hours before. Commentators call me brilliant, ruthless, brave. Some called it calculated cruelty. Others praised the theatricality of it. One host even said it was the most Emmy-worthy moment of the night. I felt none of it. No thrill, no vindication, just stillness, as if I had finally stopped bleeding but hadn't yet started healing. Evelyn, on the other hand, was everywhere. Not literally. She vanished. No statements, no posts, no paparazzi sightings, but the media filled in the blanks. Anonymous sources spoke on her behalf. Former friends released exclusive statements. Fashion blogs debated whether she'd return her borrowed gown or if the designer would sue. Talk shows dissected her silence, turning her into a character in a show she didn't write. I didn't envy her, but I didn't pity her either. She had scripted our relationship in half-truths and camera angles. Now the world was watching her drown in the very narrative she'd helped create. By the third day, the backlash had gone nuclear. Brands dropped her. Endorsements vanished. A skincare company canceled the campaign before it launched. Her modeling agency removed her from their active roster. Even her lawyer, the one who had always worn $1,000 suits and smug smiles, suddenly stopped taking her calls. My team begged me to issue a statement. Clarify the intent, they said. Shift the focus back to your performance. Don't let the moment define you. But I let it define me, just not in the way they thought. I didn't speak, not once, because silence, used properly, is louder than confession. For years, I had spoken when I was told to, posted when I was prompted, smiled when I was crumbling. Now, for the first time, I had nothing to say and the power to say nothing. But with power came consequence. Some studios grew nervous. A rom-com, I had been cast and suddenly shifted direction. A major brand froze its campaign launch. I could feel it, the subtle pullback, the cautious tones in phone calls, the way meetings became emails, then became nothing. They liked their leading men spotless, and I had just proven I bled like everyone else. So I did what I had never dared to do before. I disappeared, not in the performative, paparazzi-avoiding kind of way. I didn't jet off to Europe or post some vague spiritual retreat. I simply unplugged. No updates, no plane tickets. I packed a bag, got in my car, and drove east into the desert. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my team, not my family, not even my assistant. I turned off my phone somewhere outside Palm Springs and left it in the glove compartment. The silence was deafening. Beautiful. I rented a small house, adobe walls, no Wi-Fi, barely any signal. Just enough electricity for a lamp and a kettle. I bought groceries from a market that didn't recognize me. I grew a beard, I watched the sun rise and fall without checking a clock. And for a long time, I did nothing. It was terrifying. At first, the quiet itched. My thoughts were too loud. Regret circled like a buzzard, picking at the bones of my choices. I wondered if I had gone too far, if I had become the villain in my own story, if I had thrown fire where I should have walked away. But eventually, the silence became home. I stopped thinking about Evelyn, stopped rehearsing what I would say if she ever called, stopped wondering if the world still remembered me. Because out there, in the dry quiet of nowhere, I began to remember who I was before I belonged to everyone else. I started writing. Not a script, not a memoir, just pages, reflections, fragments, memories I hadn't let myself process. I wrote about the first audition I ever bombed, about my father's disappointed silence when I chose acting, about Evelyn's smile the day we met, and the way it turned cold without warning. It wasn't art, it was survival. And as I wrote, something cracked open inside me. Not pain, but clarity. I saw how much of my life I had performed, not just on camera, but in every interaction. I had been acting long before I was ever paid for it. And Evelyn wasn't my first betrayal. I had betrayed myself years before, quietly, without even noticing. That was the true heartbreak. But heartbreak, when accepted fully, can also be a kind of rebirth. So I stayed in the desert for weeks, maybe months. I stopped counting. I grew thin, got stronger, learned how to be bored without panic, learned how to be alone without shame. And then, one morning, I opened my eyes and knew I was ready. Not to return to who I was, but to build something new. There's a myth in Hollywood that rock bottom is easy to spot. The drugs, the mugshots, the shaky paparazzi footage of a once beloved actor yelling in a bathrobe. That's the version people like because it's loud, consumable, clickable. But real rock bottom? It's quiet. It shows up when you least expect it, wearing the face of normalcy. Mine came on a Tuesday. I've been back from the desert for almost a month. Physically, at least. I was staying in a condo I used to lease for guests, tucked away in the hills above Studio City. It was small, gray, impersonal, exactly what I needed. The windows looked out over the city I used to own, the city that no longer called. Every morning, I made coffee, sat in the same chair, stared at the same skyline. Sometimes the phone would ring, usually my agent, sometimes a tabloid, often no one. I didn't answer. I wasn't afraid. I was just unfinished. Then came the Tuesday. It started like the rest. Cold coffee, blank screen. I tried to write, but found nothing. Not words, not thoughts. I opened an old folder from my breakout film, behind-the-scenes photos, press clips, a blooper reel someone had gifted me in a gold flash drive. And there I was, younger, cleaner, still filled with hope, smiling with my co-stars, talking to the director, practicing lines in the mirror with the kind of focus you only have when you still believe the stakes matter. I watched myself on that screen like I was someone else. And maybe I was. Maybe he had died somewhere between the premieres and the betrayals, between Evelyn's lies and my silence. The weight of it hit me all at once. Not just what I had lost, but who I had let myself become. For so long, I had been playing the part of the actor, the man who had it all together, the professional, the romantic lead, the myth. But under it all, I had been hollowing out. Every photo shoot, every soundbite, every relationship I let rot quietly in the background. All of it chipped away until there was nothing left but performance. And now the curtain had fallen, and I didn't know what to do with the silence. I sat there for hours, barely breathing, phone face down, blinds drawn. At one point, I heard someone knock. A delivery maybe, or a fan who tracked me down. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because for the first time, I realized I had nothing to give. Not a smile, not a statement, not a script. Rock bottom doesn't break you with noise. It breaks you with the realization that the applause has stopped and you didn't even notice when it did. Later that night, I turned on the TV, not for entertainment, just for sound. A rerun of an award show was playing, one I had once co-hosted. I watched myself walk the stage, make jokes, hug people I hadn't spoken to in years. The audience had laughed. The cameras had loved me, and I had hated every second of it. Not because I wasn't proud. I was, but because now I could see the cracks. I saw how tightly my smile was pinned to my jaw, how carefully my posture was sculpted to hide the exhaustion. I watched that version of myself and thought, God, you were already gone, weren't you? I turned off the TV, sat in the dark, let the weight settle, and then I reached for a notebook. Not the one I'd used in the desert. This one was older. Leather-bound, a gift from a director who once told me, "You've got stories no one's ready to hear yet." I had laughed at the time, but now I opened it slowly, reverently, like a sacred thing. I didn't plan to write. I just let the pen move. And what came out surprised me. It wasn't a screenplay, not even close. It was a confession, a chronicle of failure, of fame, of being loved for things that weren't real, of betraying myself long before Evelyn ever had the chance. I wrote for hours. Pages poured out, raw, messy, unstructured, but honest. For the first time, truly honest. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't go back to Hollywood the same way. I didn't want the same trailers, the same sets, the same machine. I wanted something real, something that stripped everything else away. And I realized the only way to reclaim my story was to tell it myself. No filters, no rewrites, no studio notes. A film, yes, but not for the box office, not for the critics, for me, for anyone who had ever been broken in silence, for anyone who had smiled while dying inside, for anyone who had been loved for a mask they no longer wanted to wear. The idea was simple. A man, once famous, now forgotten, living in isolation, haunted by the version of himself that everyone still remembers. Not a redemption story, not a revenge tale, just the truth. I would call it Framed in Lights, because that's what I had been, a portrait painted by others frozen in someone else's spotlight. And this time, I would frame it myself. The day I pressed upload felt nothing like I imagined. There was no swelling music, no cinematic thunderclap of finality, just the quiet click of a mouse and the soft hum of my laptop fan as the progress bar inched forward. That's how it ends, I suppose, not with fireworks, but with a whisper. And maybe that's how it really begins. The film, if you could call it that, was raw, stripped down to the bone. I shot it myself over the course of 4 months. No crew, no budget, just a secondhand camera, an old mic I duct taped to a broom handle, and the kind of isolation most people would run from. But I'd already lived the noise. I was ready for the silence. I filmed in the desert, on rooftops, in motels with flickering lights. I shot scenes at dusk and dawn, chasing that imperfect, unforgiving light that reveals everything makeup hides. Sometimes I read from a script. Most times I didn't. I let the truth do the writing. There were no characters, no plot, just a man, broken, rebuilding, reflecting. I didn't give him a name. He didn't need one. The story wasn't linear. Just fragments, pieces of memory, confessions whispered into the void, reflections on fame, love, failure, flashbacks to award shows, voiceovers of journal entries, scenes of him, of me, staring into a mirror and not recognizing the face staring back. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't polished, but it was real. And when I was done, I didn't take it to a studio. I didn't call a distributor. I didn't sell it to Netflix or pitch it to HBO. I uploaded it to a public video platform under an alias. No trailer, no poster, just a black title card. Framed in Lights, a film by no one. Then I closed the laptop and went for a walk. I didn't expect anyone to watch it. Not really. I just needed it out of me. Needed to breathe without carrying it anymore. But something strange happened. By morning, there were a few hundred views, then 1,000. By the end of the week, 1,000,000. People began sharing it with captions like "This destroyed me. I've never felt so seen. Who made this?" They didn't know it was me. Not at first. The face in the film was gaunt, unshaven, a ghost of the man they remembered from glossy covers and talk shows. But eventually, someone recognized the voice. A side-by-side went viral. Hollywood's golden boy speaks, and you won't believe what he says. And just like that, I was a story again. Only this time, I had written it. Journalists reached out. Studios, too. They wanted to distribute, to license, to sign me to comeback deals. There were emails about book rights, podcasts, docuseries. They all called it bold, vulnerable, the reinvention of a lifetime. I didn't answer most of them, because for the first time, I wasn't performing anymore. I wasn't trying to be back. I wasn't trying to be anyone. I was just me. Evelyn reached out once. A short email. "I saw the film. I hope you found what you were looking for." There was no apology, just the faint echo of a woman who once believed she owned the narrative. I didn't reply, because she was no longer part of it. My life now is quiet. Not empty, just different. I live in a small place by the coast. I write when I want to, fill when I can. I teach an acting class once a week at a community center. Not the kind where people want fame, the kind where they want healing. I walk a lot, watch sunsets without framing them, make coffee without checking messages. Sometimes strangers recognize me. Most of the time, they don't. And when they do, they always ask the same question. "Are you really him?" And I always smile, tilt my head, and say the only thing that's ever felt true. I used to be, because now I'm someone else, someone better, someone free.